everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. And I think my timing is actually really good tonight because you've got a couple of hours to sit and listen to me while you wait for a single NBA review that's going on in the Knicks and Celtics game, which I have on here in the studio. And I think that the NBA playoffs have been defined by how many reviews there are, and it has become absolutely exhausting. So if you're not watching that, welcome in. Then let's have some fun football talk here tonight. As always, this is the time of year for you guys to ask whatever you like, throw stuff out there, give hot takes, give predictions, projections, whatever you like. And I'm happy to react to all those things. Intern Clay is going to join in just a second, and he has gathered a bunch of rankings and lists around the NFL, whether it's a crazy wide receiver all-time list or the power rankings, which we will get into in just a moment here. And also strength of schedule, which is funny because the schedule hasn't come out yet. And it was pointed out, I saw our friends over at Bring Me the News pointed out that we have been discussing how difficult the Vikings schedule is expected to be this year, but last year they were also projected to have a really, really tough schedule. So I guess maybe in May it is not so easy to figure out, but that's another thing that's coming right around the corner. I'm very excited for when we get that first schedule and we get to pick it and break it down. That's always one of my favorite times of the year. But David mentions the Ireland thing that is out there, and it's not official that the Vikings are playing in Ireland, but there are some reports that they are going to be there. And a little disappointing to me because Pittsburgh was one of those trips that I wanted to go on, but I'm sure that the Vikings have a huge contingency of fans that would like to go. And not only that, but also I think one of the bigger international fan bases in the entire NFL that would get to see them in a different place in Ireland if that's the case. So I'm sure a lot of you would be excited to get tickets and fly over there, or just if you happen to be an international fan, then, enjoy the game in Ireland. So good for you. But I just kind of wish that it was like the Jaguars or something, that they had taken the game. I know that they're not playing the Jaguars this year, but you understand my point. Like last year, they took the Jets game, and that was fine with me. Like, that's totally all right. Okay, they're playing the Jets. They, to me, were not that exciting of a team. But with Pittsburgh, I also don't know how exciting they're going to be, and maybe they'll have Aaron Rodgers and maybe they won't. But it was more about the city, the stadium, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We just don't see them a lot covering the Minnesota Vikings. The last time the Vikings went to Pittsburgh was back in 2017, the game where Ryan Quigley threw a pass for some reason, and Case Keenum played so poorly that we thought they got to go get another quarterback somehow. And then he won every game after that until the NFC Championship, except for one in Carolina. So, that's the last time. It's been a while since they've played in Pittsburgh. I was looking forward to that. But if you're not somebody who wanted to make that trip like me, then you're probably pretty excited about them going to Ireland, or at least that is the report. We do not know that for sure. So don't, mistake me that it's not confirmed yet, but it's a report that the Vikings will potentially be that team going to Ireland. And that's really all we got as far as news goes, is a Pittsburgh host saying the Vikings are going to be their opponent in Ireland, which means we've got to find other things to talk about. And that was intern Clay and his homework assignment for today. Hello, Clay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
The homework assignment for today was find rankings and stuff that we can talk about, and then we'll see how listeners feel about those rankings. So you've got power rankings, some quarterback rankings, some fantasy rankings involving the Vikings. You were grinding today.
Yeah, I got a little bit of everything. It is officially ranking season, and people are throwing everything out there. So I wanted to start with some of the power rankings for the Vikings, and ESPN in their recent power rankings. They have the Vikings at 9. And then NFL.com, they have the Vikings at 10. So how do we feel about these rankings?
I think, and if you got questions, comments, takes, toss them in the chat. Like, we'll weave in and out of answering any questions that you have, and also your reactions to any of these power rankings. And I do want to say that it is probably the thing that I take the least seriously in all of my life. So we're going to try to have fun with rankings and not get to like the ninth. Why aren't they 13th? Like, just, I just can't muster the amount of energy for that. But it is something interesting to talk about right now because we're coming out of the entire offseason. So, in a lot of ways, a ESPN and an NFL.com ranking your team is really giving you a reflection of how much better they think you got. Do they think you got better? Do they think you got worse? Where do they see you? And I would be pretty curious about how these match up with over unders in the NFL. And I know the Vikings over under post draft did not move. Shockingly, a guard did not move an over under. That usually doesn't happen. I did see a few people talking about that. Like, why didn't they, give us a little more credit after we solidified the offensive line? I'm like, I don't know that it works that way exactly. But ninth from ESPN and 10th, I think is fair of where they have them. I expected in part maybe to see them lower because there's quarterback uncertainty. But I think what they proved last year is that even when they have quarterback uncertainty, they are still capable of winning 14 games and still capable of competing for a division at the end of the day. And they've gotten better. The problem is with ranking ninth or 10th is that it's not extreme enough to have a hot take on because it's not quite high enough to go, whoa, these power rankings think that you're going to be a legend this year. You're winning the Super Bowl. Like, well, that kind of, if you're ninth, that means they think you are a first round out type of team, or they think that maybe you can win around in the playoffs and you're going to be hanging around in the race, but you're not the most serious contenders. And it also thinks that they need to take you seriously as a team that's going to be in the hunt and in the mix. And I guess my reaction on this is that they needed to be better than that in order to have a successful season. Because I was just working on an article today about what Jonathan Grenard said the other day, talking about how more is required is the shirts that they're wearing after getting knocked out in the first round of last year. And that's their big mantra this year. More is required, which means more than just ending up at the number 9 spot in the NFL at the end of the day. So even though there isn't some blazing hot extreme take here from either one of these major outlets, I think it says if they think that you're barely in the top third of the league, that's not where the Minnesota Vikings are expecting to be at the end of the year based on what they put into this roster.
Yeah, I like both of these Vikings ratings. It's hard to really get them any higher on these lists because of JJ McCarthy's lack of experience. But it's also a top 10 rating going into the season is not bad. It's not where you don't want to be, right? And honestly, the bigger thing that shocked me about these lists was the Packers rankings. Both of these lists have them inside the top 10. I think it was 8 and 9. And I know the Packers are always a 10-win team, it seems, but the NFC North is stacked this year. And I think teams like the Rams, Broncos, and Bucks, I think they should kind of squeeze in those 7 to 10 range. So I don't know about the Packers, but I think the Vikings rankings is very fair.
I think so too. And I also think that it's very Vikingsy to be ninth and 10th. I mean, that's just who they've been for a long time is, well, no one thinks that they stink, but also no one thinks that they're a favorite to go and compete for a Super Bowl. And what you're doing or aiming for as the Vikings by drafting JJ McCarthy and putting the amount of money that they put into this roster is you're trying to make the case to the world. No, actually, we are more than just that team that is the first round out. We're more than the team that just finishes with the ninth best record. And I was thinking along the lines of, would it be a successful season? How many teams make the playoffs? We have, what is that? 14 teams make the playoffs. And if you end up with the ninth best, that would put you at drafting at what, 22nd? No, 23rd. You'd be drafting 23rd, which probably means that you either are first round out or you win a playoff game and then lose, I think. I'm doing this on the fly, trying to figure this out, but that's about right. If the Vikings were to finish ninth or 10th and draft 22nd or 23rd next year, I don't think that's good enough to say that this all worked out the way that they were aiming for, which really speaks to where the expectations for the Minnesota Vikings are going into the season locally and for everybody in the fan base that is watching closely with this team versus the outside world. I think when you debut a quarterback, the rest of the league says, and everybody who's making these rankings says, that's cute. You probably won't really be a real team this year. You probably won't really be a real team when you're debuting a quarterback. I think they should be looked at differently than that. I don't know about top five. You have to earn a top five label by maybe winning a playoff game last year. But when you take where they were last year and then add, without them losing a whole heck of a lot, Cam Bynum, Patrick Jones, like a handful of role players there, but the core being entirely here. Justin Jefferson, the top receiver in the league, getting Christian Darrisaw back, coach of the year. Like 10th isn't good enough. 10th to me is not where the expectations inside the locker room, but especially locally are going to be. And I don't think it's unfair for an ESPN or an NFL.com to be saying, all right, well, look, you got JJ McCarthy and he's never played before, but at the same time, he's not a rookie quarterback. He has been around the team. And if he had zero playing experience without having a knee injury and had just practiced, I think that this number probably would have been higher. I think a lot of it is just based on nobody really knowing what to do with the fact that McCarthy has not played.
Yeah, I think 10 is fair and good for right now. But again, if they come back, because on paper, you see all the additions they made, you see the situation and the culture that's built in Minnesota. So you would like to see them keep improving on that ranking and get into that top five. So if it's the same ranking or worse next year, it's people are going to look back on the offseason that the Vikings had and think about it a lot differently than we might think how it is right now.
David says you're the only guy that would rather travel to Pittsburgh than Dublin. Well, I don't know. I like Pittsburgh. I've been a bunch of times when I used to live in Buffalo, and Pittsburgh's not very far from there. It is a beautiful city. I mean, if you haven't been, it really is incredible. Matt says, I think the roster strength is better than 9th or 10th, but I feel the schedule difficulty makes the ranking pretty fair. That's my point about the schedule difficulty is I tend to agree with when you look at the opponents that they're going to face, there aren't a lot of breaks in this schedule and they do have to play super hard divisions. At the same time, I mean, think of what we thought Jacksonville was going to be last year. I thought Jacksonville was probably going to be a playoff team last year, and they were horrendous. Like they were borderline playoffs the year before, and Trevor Lawrence got banged up and they fell off. I mean, I think we all knew the Titans were going to be pretty rough, but aside from that, we could have never figured just how horrific that division was going to be. The Texans. I had the Texans last year as the team to go to the Super Bowl, and many other people did either. And how about even like Cincinnati last year was a very popular Super Bowl pick. We don't really know until it happens. I think there's a lot of teams that you would project because of their quarterbacks to be tough. So I'm not saying it won't be a tough schedule. It's just if we rate it based on that, and then we look at the past of preseason versus actual strength of schedules, they don't really match up. I think I wrote an article about this last year. They just don't match up all that often. So it could be terrible for the Vikings, or it could be fine depending on how you play those teams, when you play those teams, which quarterbacks get hurt. Half the league's quarterbacks get hurt every year. And if you face the Philadelphia Eagles with Kenny Pickett last year, you didn't face them with the same level of strength as you did with Jalen Hurts. So I'm not dismissing that point. It's just the other part of it too is, so what if you have a difficult schedule? Like you built this team to be able to beat those teams. Like that was the point of this. Before, when you had Kirk Cousins and half a team, then you couldn't have a difficult schedule because you just weren't strong enough. But now you're supposed to be able to go roster for roster with just about anybody. Son of a Beavers wants to know your power ranking. How about we do this? How about we go back and forth and we rank them like NFL teams until we get to where we think the Vikings should be.
Okay.
So if we're going to start out, I mean, I think that the number one pick is pretty obvious. It goes to the Super
Yeah.
Bowl champs. They
Hmm.
did not have enough happen to them this offseason for me to say, boy, they're going to fall off and disappear. So who would you pick as the second power ranked National Football League team behind the Philadelphia Eagles?
Um, Part of me wants to say the Ravens, but I feel like no matter if Patrick Mahomes is out there, I feel like I got to put him at 2, especially with Chris Jones still on the team. Him, like Mahomes on offense, and then Chris Jones on defense. With the coaching staff they have, it's like they're gonna be competing every year with just that. So I have to put them at 2 for me.
I think it's fair. And I also think they weren't that good of a team. They totally got away with one in Buffalo, with that team kind of melting at the end and giving up the blitz and throwing it up in the air and all that sort of stuff. But that's fair. I mean, just based on the results that Patrick Mahomes has had in his career. And they're going to get receivers back. They're going to be stronger than they were last year in Kansas City. And when you already have Mahomes finding ways to win, it's just they're not as strong as they have been in the past. And I wonder if I would put Baltimore ahead of them or even Buffalo ahead of them. Where do we want to put the Commanders, who are in the NFC Championship? It's a little bit tricky there. I think I would go Buffalo though after either Buffalo or Baltimore. I think I would go Buffalo after Kansas City. So if we're doing like 1, 2, 3, Philadelphia, Kansas City, and then Buffalo, do you want Baltimore after that?
Yeah, I'll take the Ravens after that.
Okay. Baltimore after that. And they cut their kicker today for football reasons
Yeah.
only. I'm
Hmm.
sure. I'm sure. What
Yeah.
it's the franchise that had to really be pushed to get rid of Ray Rice, and then having this happen to them. And then they drafted Mike Green, who also had a background of some similar types of problems. So, that's Baltimore for you. But I don't think their improvement at kicker changes much on the power ranking. So
No.
we basically just picked the best overall team and then the best quarterbacks after that. And I would go where it gets tricky is when you have the Commanders, the Lions, the Vikings. And I'll include the Packers in this. I mean, the Packers were a good team last year, had to play some games with missing their quarterback. They also lucked out with the AFC South. I think I would probably go after this. I think I would have to go with Washington because of what their quarterback means to them. If you can be a rookie and take your team to the NFC Championship and then improve on your roster around that, the fact that the Vikings quarterback has just not played a game yet, it's hard to put them ahead of the Washington Commanders. So we would have, just to reset the list, it's Philly, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Washington. Now, is there another team that you would clearly take over the Vikings here? Would it be Detroit?
Yeah, I think we have to go Detroit here. I feel like their roster is just got even better, and I know a lot of their players are coming off injury, so it'll be interesting to see how they come back after that. But it's just such a stacked roster. Jared Goff has been playing great football, and it's hard to see them not be a good team next year, a top 5 team next year.
I think you can make an argument then after that the Vikings belong. Cincinnati has got to be in the conversation because of Joe Burrow. The Chargers were in the playoffs with 11 wins last year. The Broncos got a little better, maybe not as much better as I thought they were going to get. And then where do the Packers go? I mean, do we have to put the Rams ahead of the Vikings because they beat them in the playoffs? I don't think we do. I don't think, but the Rams did get Devontae Adams. They still have their defense stacked. Do you have that ESPN ranking up? I'm curious if they had where they had the Rams in this mix.
Yep. So ESPN had the Rams at 7.
Okay.
And then NFL had them at 8. And okay. I also have, so my 7 is the Rams, and then I have the Broncos at 8, and then Vikings at 9.
Okay. I mean, the Broncos could have the best defense in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
And that's going to matter. They can run the ball probably a little better this year. They didn't at all last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't that's the thing. I don't think that any of this is unfair, but if we're looking at just from an NFC perspective though, cuz we talked about it as ninth, so that gets you maybe a first round out. Philly, Washington, Detroit, and the Rams because they beat the Vikings and they got Devontae Adams, and then the Vikings are right there. So if
Yeah.
the Vikings end up as a top 4 team, I mean that's what the expectation is now that they've built this roster over 3 years. It
Hmm.
also says that the competition is going to be stiff. I mean, there's now a couple years ago when the Vikings won 13. I mean, the entire NFC North was horrendous. Now it's the toughest division in the entire NFL. And the fact that the Rams didn't go away, Seattle, for whatever you think about what Sam Darnold's going to do there, they won 10 games last year. They're not going to be a joke. Tampa Bay is still good. And I think Dallas is going to bounce back a bit from where they were last year. They had catastrophic injuries all over the place, and they are only 1 year removed from what, a 12-win season. So they should be a little bit better. And that goes to the conversation about the Vikings schedule because they're going to have the NFC East on it. So I think that it's fair where they're at, but if they're not in the 5 or well, really 6 final teams or at least the final 8 teams, then it's been maybe not the successful season that we're looking for. What else did you come up with? Because I said to you, any type of ranking, whatever you got. If someone's ranking the best uniform colors in football, I don't think they did that, but if they are, then let's include that. So what else did you find?
So CBS's Garrett Podell, sorry, Garrett. He ranked his 10 worst quarterback rooms in the NFL, and the bottom three, the worst was the Steelers, and then the Colts, followed by the Browns, and then the Vikings were ranked fourth worst. How do you feel about this ranking?
Okay, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because again, I think we all understand that JJ McCarthy has not played any football yet. So we have to have a healthy amount of skepticism of what JJ McCarthy has is going to be. But at the same time, how can you ignore the fact that Sam Darnold won 14 games for this team last year? It cannot be overstated how bad of an NFL quarterback Sam Darnold had been in his career. And if you took out a microscope, you could find, well, he was good in this little run with Carolina and it wasn't too bad in those games with San Francisco where he came in as a backup. But I remember looking at this quarterbacks who had played 50 games or more since 2018 and all the quarterback ratings, he was like the second or third worst out of anybody in the NFL. And last year, with this setup that was actually a worse setup than this, you could even say significantly after Christian Darrisaw goes down, it was significantly worse than the offensive line he's going to run out now, and significantly worse in the backfield. Jordan Mason versus some Ty Chandler and then Cam Akers after that. And the fact that they've even added, I'm not saying Ty Felton's going to be the difference between whatever number of wins, but even just adding another weapon that they did not have last year with Sam Darnold, I don't know how you can just do this exercise in a bubble. And if you'll allow me to give my sort of annual rant about quarterback rankings, I don't understand why they're done without any sort of context. Like, oh, well, this is where the guy was drafted and how much raw talent I think he has. So I rank them. I don't really get that because they play real football on real football teams with real football coaches in real football stadiums. And every single one of those things is not just decent for JJ McCarthy. The sliders are up to 10 on every one of those things. He's got the most favorable stadium to play quarterback in the NFL. He's got the best receiver. He's got another top 25 receiver in Jordan Addison. He's got a top 10 tight end. He's got a top 10 left tackle. He's got a top 10 right tackle. He's got 17 mil at right guard, first round pick at left guard, and one of the better centers of the last decade. Like, that matters to how he's going to perform, as we saw so much from Sam Darnold last year. So I don't know how you can look at that and put that in a bottom ranking. I mean, there's it, if we're talking about what the performance is going to be, isn't that what we're trying to get at? What are they going to do in 2025? He's not going to be on par with the Steelers. I promise you that. I mean, that he would have to break his hand and stay in the game to play quarterback like the Steelers are going to get. You go around the league. I mean, Carolina's made some improvements. We don't really know what to expect from Bryce Young there. We still don't know what to expect from Caleb Williams. The Giants were they one of the bottom ones? The Giants?
Let me double
Because
check.
if the Vikings are lower than the Giants, I mean,
They were number 9.
okay, stop ranking stuff, Brett. Just
Yeah.
stop. Just stop ranking stuff. If you're gonna tell me that Jameis and Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart is a better room than last year's first round pick with all the things the Vikings have, like, you just need to just do something else. I know rankings do clicks, but try something else. Try writing a real article, because that doesn't make any sense. The Giants quarterback room is laughable. I mean, even when we go to, like, okay, they had Indianapolis, right? That was one of them. But
Yeah.
was Tennessee on there?
Um,
So how
let
would
me.
Tennessee not be on the bottom of the list? How would Tennessee be higher when their quarterback has never played and has a horror show
I'll tell you
as
the whole list. So 10 was the Seahawks. 9 was the Giants. Let me see. 8 was Denver. 7 was the
these are
Saints.
the worst. So you're counting
Yeah,
down the worst. Denver is one of the
yeah,
worst. Their rookie
hmm
quarterback threw for 29 touchdowns and went to the playoffs.
yeah. Then the Saints, then the Jets, and then we
Okay,
have,
Saints and Jets.
and then the Titans, and then
Wait,
it's
so wait,
Vikings.
they're saying that the Vikings
Saints, Jets,
quarterback
and
room.
Titans are better than the
See, I
Vikings.
I just said that I would not get annoyed with any rankings, but this person with a presumably straight internet face, did AI write this? Because that doesn't make any sense. The Jets have Justin Fields as their quarterback.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's I think they're really playing on this he hasn't played before. But it's like if McCarthy was playing, if this was like Road to Glory on the NCAA video game, he's not playing on all Madden. He hasn't turned to like pro or superstar. It's nothing crazy because he has all these resources around him. So he doesn't have to go out there and be Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. He doesn't have to be anything crazy. He just has to be pretty much what Sam Darnold was last year, or at least close to that.
I mean, son of a beaver says, who wrote this? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't recognize the name, but maybe there's a reason for that. That just makes no sense at all. And the thing is, too, that it's not that we've seen JJ McCarthy play in real games, but we have seen JJ McCarthy in training camp and in the preseason. And I know those are not real games and nothing happens until you've actually proven it. But he was not only competent, but actually good in those situations, usually playing with the second team. And we also have to factor in, too, that the Vikings have the coach of the year because he got the most out of a quarterback. And maybe when Josh Dobbs was the quarterback, they didn't win a lot of games because that's someone who's barely in the league. But even when Kirk Cousins is the quarterback, he's getting the most out of him. That again has to be thrown in the pot here. Justin Fields is barely a starter in the NFL, and it would be cool to see Justin Fields succeed and be better. But all the evidence says that guy cannot play at all. And putting him ahead of somebody who's in the environment as the Vikings, by the way, their whole history is making quarterbacks look good. The entire history, it's Kirk Cousins got to play with Diggs, Thielen, and then Jefferson. And then before that, Case Keenum. Teddy did not have very good wide receivers, but you go back a little farther than that, and then you get into that. Gus Frerotte was winning games with the Vikings receivers. Brett Favre has one of his best years of all time. Like, this is what they do as a franchise, is make quarterbacks play better. And maybe if he's including the backup, Sam Howell is certainly not great shakes when you look at his career as he was playing for the Commanders and won 4 games with them, or Brett Rippon. But to me, when you say quarterback room, if you don't weigh the starting quarterback 96% of that, then I'm not sure what you're actually doing. So where would we really rank him in a non, like, this person did LSD and made a list type of world? Like, where would we actually
Yeah, I think
put?
he just like weighed in the backups way too much.
That
It's
could be
like
true. That could be true, which also
I
makes no sense.
I get the Giants have like three potential, maybe competent quarterbacks on their
Right.
roster. So maybe that makes them better than one, perhaps potentially really good quarterback, which makes zero
No
sense to
sense.
me. But
None at
maybe
all.
maybe that was his process. I'm not sure. But I think worst, I'm still going with the Steelers. I think he got that one right.
I appreciate Sean saying that he got rid of the clickbait stuff, and this is one of those conversations where like we're gonna have some stuff on the way, which is mini camps and OTAs, and I'm really excited for that. But we're also in a situation for right this moment where like all right, let's play in the mud. Let's play in the mud a little bit. Let's see what everybody else is saying about the Minnesota Vikings, and then weigh what we think against that if we're looking at there's a clear top, I would say 10 in the NFL of quarterbacks who have proven that they belong in that category. And that's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. I think CJ Stroud, that team was horrific last year. And to get them to the playoffs was quite an accomplishment. So I'll still throw Stroud in there, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels did enough for me. Dak Prescott, still a good quarterback, even though last year didn't go so well. Jared Goff. But aside from that, everybody else still has either a lot to prove or I'm not entirely sold on what they're going to be next year. So we don't know about like Matthew Stafford. We all think that Matthew Stafford is a very impressive quarterback for his career and was great against the Vikings last year. But I mean, if age comes for him, if injury comes for him, there's a good chance that he's not as good as JJ McCarthy. And his numbers were nowhere close to Sam Darnold last year. Baker Mayfield, I think, has established himself as belonging in this discussion. But everybody else, I mean, would you be, it kind of comes down to, would you be shocked if JJ McCarthy was better than blank? I mean, if he was better than Purdy? Of course not, because Brock Purdy's had a lot of his teammates leave him. Better than Kyler Murray? Nope. Better than Sam Darnold? Nope. Wouldn't be shocked at that. Better than Bryce Young? No. Penix? No. Caleb Williams? No. Wouldn't be surprised by that. Whoever plays for the Giants? Of course not. Geno Smith? He could be better than Geno Smith. So I know that a lot of it comes down to who stays healthy, whose team has everything fall into place and everything else. But I think it goes into like that second group of quarterbacks. We've got the clear best of the best who are going to be there every year. And then if we were trying to project McCarthy fairly, it would put him in that sort of 12 to 14 range, which if he does, they have a good enough team to have them right in that race that we were talking about to start.
Yeah, I think he is bound to be in that middle of the group range just because we haven't been able to see him play yet. But there's there's no problem with being optimistic for JJ McCarthy. It's just such a good situation for him, and he has the quarterback guru in his ears, coaching him everything he needs to know. So I don't know, and just his mentality, just the way he holds himself, the way he talks, and yeah, it just all adds up to seem like it's gonna work out. But I guess we won't know till we know. So
Is the writer from Ohio. Yeah. I mean, I just, that one's hard to wrap your head around, but maybe if they're weighing Sam Howell as the backup, I guess we can understand. And it's not even clear cut that Sam Howell will be the backup. I would also leave the door open still for Brett Rippon to potentially win that job because he's been in Kevin O'Connell's offense for a couple years. And if he knows it better than Sam Howell, then they could pick him. And that would not be one of the, but if you're going to do that, then rank the backups. Then if you want to weigh the backups, I don't understand the whole quarterback room thing. Maybe it was just to make sure to get the Giants in there because they've got a whole room of guys that I wouldn't want as my quarterback. What else did you have for rankings? You went in search of the internet for people ranking stuff. What else did you find?
Yep. So former Patriots and Eagles cornerback Asante Samuel was on Twitter a few days ago, and he posted his best receivers of all time. And at first, not gonna lie, I thought it was one of the worst lists I've ever seen. But I missed the part where he said it's not in any order. So Asante, you still have your list privileges. So here's who he had. He had Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, Isaac Bruce, Larry Fitzgerald, Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison, Tim Brown, Julio Jones, and then he left 9 and 10 open initially, but in later tweets he came back and mentioned Chris Carter and Anquan Bolden. So how do we feel about this group of players?
I would not put Anquan Bolden as the 10th best receiver of all time. I mean, that is pretty nutty. I also think that maybe Asante just went to the all time receiving list in terms of yards and just made his list the all time receiving yards list. I, I'm looking at Pro Football References Hall of Fame monitor, which does a pretty good job of evening things out by a score that's supposed to project whether you would go into the Hall of Fame or not. And that has Rice, Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison, Larry Fitzgerald, Terrell Owens. But one of the biggest issues is with this list is that it doesn't include anybody old. I mean, even going back to Chris Carter is about as far back. And you kind of think, oh, Asante Samuel, did you just also name guys that you went against and then threw in Jerry Rice because you knew of Jerry Rice? That's what it also sounds like. But guys like Steve Largent, James Lofton, Lance Allworth, there's a lot of receivers. Paul Warfield ends up on this list as well, but he was catching 40 passes in the 1970s. Don Maynard. We have to even out for some of the best wide receivers of all time. Fred Biletnikoff is clearly one of them. Stallworth, Lynn Swann, Wes Chandler. Like these guys did not, Chandler caught a lot of passes, but a lot of these guys played in an era where they just didn't throw as much. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers were averaging 20 yards a pass down the field, 20 yards of completion or something, because they're just launching it up because it was 1972 and they were running and then just throwing a bomb all the time. I think that he had to do a little more research to toss in some of those great receivers. There's no list that cannot have Steve Largent in it because when he retired, he had every record. And someone like Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, I mean, those are Super Bowl driving successful guys. But if we're doing even just of that era, did he have Reggie Wayne on there? I think Reggie Wayne is probably the most underrated wide receiver statistically in NFL history and probably belongs in the discussion a little bit more. Is he on there?
No, he's not on Asante's.
Okay, he didn't have like Michael Irvin, who probably belonged in there as well. Andre Johnson just went into the Hall of Fame. Probably not quite top 10. Art Monk was another guy, old school guy, that belonged in the list. Did he have Kelvin Johnson? Was Kelvin Johnson on the list?
See, I don't get how you have a top 10 receiver list and you leave Calvin Johnson off of it. I know he had a short career, but he had people running punt return defense against him. It's like, come on, man. You have to have him on there.
Yeah, leaving off Calvin Johnson is absolutely insane. I think my brain just wrote in Calvin Johnson on his list because it wouldn't make any sense.
You kind of just assume he's on there. It's like, all right,
so,
Jerry
to include
Rice,
Anquan
Randy,
Bolden.
Terrell. Oh, wait, Calvin's not there? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, to include Anquan Bolden, who just, again, if you search by receptions, Anquan Bolden just comes up because he played for 14, 15 years, whatever it was. And obviously you're going to rack up a bunch of receptions just by existing in the league for that long. What is really actually a fun exercise is ranking all-time Vikings receivers because they have so many good ones. Randy Moss is the GOAT. Justin Jefferson has a chance to knock him off. Chris Carter has to be number 2. I think Jefferson is already number 3 in history. But then after that, it gets very interesting because you have Ahmad Rashad, you have Adam Thielen, Sammy White, if you're going like way back. Anthony Carter is one of the best Viking receivers of all time. I think the Vikings have the best receiver history out of any team in the entire NFL.
Well, you also have fun guys like Percy Harvin.
Yes.
I liked Sidney Rice when I was growing. I don't know how good he actually was, but Sidney
for
Rice
one
was
year,
a fun
for
player
one
for
year.
Me. Yeah. And then I don't know. Do we count Stephon Diggs as like the 6th receiver or the 7 receiver? Yeah.
I mean, Minneapolis Miracle and 1A or 1B, whichever way you wanted it, for an era where they were really good. And also he got them Justin Jefferson via trade, which deserves to go up there. I think the only other teams that would be on the list if you were comparing best teams of all time for your wide receiver history or like your wide receiver Mount Rushmore, it's probably Pittsburgh. Antonio Brown may be crazy, but he
Mm,
belongs as
yeah,
one of the better receivers of all time. And then Stallworth and Lynn, and you have uh, Plaxico Burress, Hines Ward. I mean, just a bevy of guys who were there throughout their history. So those are probably them and San Francisco, probably the only other teams. But San Francisco's top heavy with Terrell Owens and Jerry Rice. But after that, I don't know who is comes
that,
after
that's
that.
that's such a nice one too.
It is
Though.
right. That's a hard. But then again, Moss Carter probably matches up with that.
Yeah, it's close up there.
So Asante Samuel, not bad, but you need to fight a little harder. You need to if you're gonna make a list. That's like the lesson for tonight's list makers. Like let's dig deeper. Let's dig deeper on this as opposed to just googling and having the whatever AI come up with the best receiving guys by receptions.
What does Mike Evans have to do to make this list?
Oh, Mike Evans, yeah. I mean, Mike Evans being one of the most consistent ever. He he belongs somewhere in this ballpark. I don't
Yeah,
think that
that's
Mike Evans quite has the level of seasons that go over the top crazy. Let me see
yeah.
where
He has a lot of like just around 1,000 yards. He doesn't have a lot of like the 1,500 yard seasons.
one of the things that I love the Hall of Fame monitor for on Pro Football Reference is making player comparisons. So Mike Evans' career is compared to Jimmy Smith, Rod Smith. Those are some my era guys, and like Brandon Marshall. You would have seen Brandon Marshall, right? Not maybe
Yeah,
not quite as
yeah,
much.
yeah. Brennan, yeah, for sure.
When you said you grew up watching Sidney Rice, that kind of broke me a little bit. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, NFC North was a lot different when I was growing up than it is now.
it also has his career pretty close to Hines Ward and Devontae Adams. I mean, it's a Hall of Fame caliber career. But yeah, I agree with Panucci that he never had some absolutely insane. Can you believe this guy's from this real world? I mean, his top season was a 1,500 yarder, which is good, but just one of those and one 1,300 yard season, and then every other year is right around 1,000, which is incredible. But it's not like when we go to Randy Moss's page and you see leading the league in touchdowns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, 23 touchdowns, 13, 1,400 yard seasons left and right. Just doesn't have to put you in the all time discussion. I think you have to have those above and beyond. Holy bleep. How did you do that? The Justin Jefferson, every year we're talking about new records that Justin Jefferson sets. That's not something that Mike Evans has really done, even though he's been a franchise caliber receiver.
Yeah, I agree, and that's Justin Jefferson. It could be like in just 4 more years, I think, and he could crack this list. It's because he has those 1,400 plus yard seasons, and same with Jamar Chase. Jamar had 17 and 17 last year. Like, that is ridiculous. So if he has like 3 of those sprinkled along 10 other 1,000 yard seasons, like these guys are going to easily be in this list, and maybe even in the top 5 when it's all said and done.
So Jefferson has played half as many seasons as Plaxico Burress did, and he already has the same Hall of Fame monitor score. He's already had a career through 5 years as good as Plaxico Burress. Other guys that are in that range that he's already matched, and he's going to blow by in the next couple of years. Guys like Greg Jennings, Marcus Colston, Amari Cooper, Antonio Freeman, T.Y. Hilton. Like, these are good receivers that he's right there. Jordy Nelson, Eric Moulds, Ed McCaffrey. He's already done what they've done in their careers, and he's already surpassed guys like Des Bryant, Emmanuel Sanders, Julian Edelman, Odell Beckham. It's crazy that he is only a couple of years away from having enough to just put him in the list of the Hall of Fame monitor players. That's just crazy considering he's played 5 seasons. What else you got? Got more rankings? Want to rank some more stuff?
Yeah, so PFF put out their rankings for the top 500 fantasy
Oh,
football players going into next
500.
season. Yeah,
Are you going to read them
500.
all?
Yep, every single one.
Okay.
Get ready. No. So they had Jamar Chase at 1, and then the highest rated Viking was Justin Jefferson at 2. The
Oh,
next highest rated Vikings players were Jordan Addison at 62, Hawkinson at 66, Aaron Jones at 69, and then Jordan Mason also cracked the top 100 at 93.
hmm.
How are we feeling about these rankings? And what's your personal fantasy football strategy? What do you like to look at? And if you had the number one pick, who are you picking this upcoming year?
Uh, yeah, sure. I mean, Justin Jefferson being top two, I guess that would be the one that I wonder about with Jefferson because they did bring in Jordan Mason. They do want to run the football more often. So is Justin Jefferson? I guess the answer has to be that no matter what, it's just not going to matter. Like Jefferson is the number one ace of this team. He is regression proof because even when it was Nick Mullins throwing him the ball, he still put up 1,000 yards in, I think it was 9 games, which
Yep.
is crazy. He's going to do whatever it is, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 yards. There will be 3 games where he doesn't have big games. And then we'll have to surround him on Thursday and be like, why didn't you have a great game? That's always a funny thing. Like last year, they had one of the best performances in franchise history offensively versus the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. And it was, I think it was 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, whatever it was. And Jefferson was the decoy in that game. And the next week, it's just, so what happened? You know, what happened was they sent the entire platoon at one player and then got destroyed. That's what happened. But I think it's fair to set it just from the beginning at 1,300 yards, and it could go up from there. As far as Addison goes, there's always going to be a ceiling on that, but the ceiling is still good because he can score a bunch of touchdowns. The really intriguing one for touchdowns would be someone like Jalen Naylor when you're deep in the woods, deep in a draft that's got 12 people and you're trying to figure it out because there's so much attention that just goes to Jefferson and Addison in those situations. They're probably also thinking the Vikings will run the ball at the goal line this year. That's maybe why Jordan Mason gets in that conversation. I think that TJ Hawkinson probably deserves to be higher because my feeling is that JJ McCarthy is good at seeing the middle of the field. He understands where his weapons are in the middle of the field. Sam Darnold was much more of a, I'm going to go deep, 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 and then get sacked if I don't throw it down the field. And oh, maybe I'll find TJ Hawkinson after I go through my deep reads. And I don't think that McCarthy operates that way. I think he's going to be much quicker to get to the underneath stuff, which is a compliment because I think he sees the field a little bit better, which could result in TJ Hawkinson having a bigger season. Not to mention he's coming off of the ACL injury. But your question about how I handle fantasy is I just lose. I don't really, just last year was the first year that I really played because we had an Underdog Fantasy sponsorship and we loved them. Underdog Fantasy, please come back next year. We loved them. But I was a bit of a fish out of water trying to figure out how to win at fantasy. And I actually did in one of my leagues, I did finish second. So I didn't completely fall on my face. But strategically, it was just like, I like this guy. Oh, I think this guy's going to be good this year. Oh, I like this guy. That was really the strategy. I don't know. Am I supposed to have a more detailed strategy than that?
I mean, some of the people I've been in leagues with, they have whole spreadsheets and stuff,
Oh.
and I don't do all that because I feel like no matter who I draft, they always get hurt, and I feel bad because I feel like it's my fault that I put some kind of bad juju on them. But I don't know. As a Bears fan, it's not common that I could get excited about drafting players to my fantasy team, so I'm jealous of all the Vikings fans out there that get to pick up their guys and root for them like more like 2 times. I don't know. Actually, I don't even know if that's a thing. But
Well, last year the reason I finished high was I picked Sam Darnold, and
oh,
I was drafting actually even before McCarthy got hurt, but I knew that Darnold was going to be QB1, so I just picked Sam Darnold at the end of the draft, and then I don't remember who my other quarterback was, probably got hurt, but then he had a top 10 fantasy year and he or whatever threw for 35 touchdowns. I was like, oh yeah, well, genius, obviously genius. But you're right about the Bears. Hey, look, you can draft Colson Loveland. He'll get 97 catches for 680 yards, and it'll be
Yes.
awesome for you.
Give me 6 points a game. That'll be awesome. Yeah. But no, the biggest thing that confused me about this list, and it must I don't know really how QBs are valued in this guy's mind, but JJ McCarthy was ranked 217. And that's the QB 21 and puts him behind pretty much every kicker and defense. So I'm assuming it's just how quarterbacks are valued, but I thought that was pretty crazy.
There's a few different things with that. I mean, number one is if you're looking at a Jalen Hurts or a Jaden Daniels, like those guys are going to rack up rushing yards. And if you rack up rushing yards, you're going to be a fantasy freak. Even if you're an Anthony Richardson that can't throw the ball from like me to my camera, even he's going to get a lot of points just because he runs, he gets touchdowns, he gets at the goal line, and he's going to get those. I don't think McCarthy is going to be a running quarterback. I think he will scramble and he'll get first downs. But I even saw some chart today that was percentage of points in fantasy that were running. And it was only 8% from Sam Darnold out of all of his points. I don't think that Kevin O'Connell wants to have a running quarterback. I think he wants to have escapability and playmaking and get out of there if you want to, but maybe 200 yards from JJ McCarthy, maybe a couple of QB sneaks into the end zone, but you're not talking 50 touchdowns because he's doing the Cam Newton runs into the end zone all the time. And he's probably going to have touchdowns stolen from him from Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. That could be part of the calculation as well. That if this is why touchdowns can be such a silly stat sometimes. It's like if you're Sam Darnold and he threw for 35 touchdowns, which he deserves all the credit for doing, but they couldn't run at the 2-yard line. You have to throw in the touchdowns, and you're putting up this big number when some other teams, the quarterback might throw for 26 touchdowns, but your team scores the same amount. Now, I think the Vikings had 47 touchdowns last year as a team. A couple of those went to Andrew Van Ginkel, but that was a pretty good number for them. So it wasn't like he wasn't leading a good offense. It's just a funny thing about the fantasy stats versus actually how you're going to play. But I would guess that's why that McCarthy will not be that popular of a pick versus quarterbacks who run.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thinking back, Anthony Richardson was like a top 10 pick in every draft last year. And
I know.
we saw how that ended up. So it does just show how much the running trait is valued in fantasy. So,
all right, you got anything else? Any other rankings? Sure,
yeah,
we didn't rank sock colors, face mask colors.
no, not
We're
this
not
time.
that's July. We'll have to do the show again in July.
I do have strength of schedule rankings without the schedule.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, Warren Sharp put out his rankings for who has the hardest strength of schedule and who has the easiest, and the Vikings were the 5th hardest schedule, and he did this based off the projected win total for next year somehow.
That's one way to do it. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about that, but how do you feel?
The doing it off of the projected win total is just as flawed as any other method that you could do right now. Actually, the best way to do it might be if you took like Mike Sando's quarterback tier thing is really great article every year because he talks to a bunch of executives and coaches and they rank all the quarterbacks. And after doing it for a long time, you get a lot of different data points on that. Like even last year, I remember talking about how some coaches or executives had Sam Darnold was maybe 24th or whatever, but in the quotes, they had said, hey, he could be a second tier quarterback under the right circumstances in Minnesota. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But I would bet if you took the quarterback tiers and just ignored the whole rest of the roster and made that the strength of schedule, that it would be more accurate than trying to take the over-unders. We saw what can happen with over-unders, and this is why gambling is really hard. And if you do it, you should do it responsibly, because last year the Vikings over-under was 6.5, and they got 14 wins. And every year I went through this when the over-under came out, and I looked at how many teams had outperformed that 6.5, and it was a lot. A lot of teams that even made the playoffs at 6.5. So the games that this method of doing it are putting in as the easiest games They might not be. Those might be 10-win teams that the NFL or gambling community just doesn't realize are going to overachieve yet. Or a lot of it too is just based on confidence. Like if you have last year a very good Vikings team, a very well coached Vikings team, but you have no confidence in the quarterback, you're going to just throw a 6.5 or 7.5 on them because you're just like, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to be. And then they end up being a really good team. So I think that's extremely flawed, but also I think it's accurate. I do because if by my method, the Matthew Coller method of figuring out strength of schedule, which is just take the opposing quarterback schedule, it's going to be a journey for the Minnesota Vikings unless some of these guys get hurt. Because if you're talking about the Eagles, Commanders, Cowboys, just alone with those quarterbacks, I still have a lot of respect for Dak Prescott, who has beaten up the Vikings sometimes. And then you have Goff, Jordan Love. If Caleb Williams takes another step, you got to play those guys a bunch. That's not going to be easy. And then Lamar, Aaron Rodgers, I guess, for the Steelers, then Joe Burrow, and then Dylan Gabriel, maybe. But there's a lot of good quarterbacks that are on the Vikings list. Now, here's a question for you on this. So he did this just based on opponents, but obviously we don't have the order of the opponents. Do you think the order of opponents when it comes out matters to you and how hard you think the schedule is?
Yeah, probably depending on the team. I think for teams probably like the Vikings or the Bears or other teams with more unproven quarterbacks, I think if you get a front loaded schedule that looks scary with the Ravens and the Commanders and the Lions and all these teams, then you might be like, oh God, like this might not be good for us. But if you're an established team, you've proven yourself as a quarterback, and I don't think you get worried about seeing certain teams come up. Maybe for other reason, maybe a defense or something. But I don't think it's just because your quarterback or whatever. So I don't know. I think if you're front loaded with a young quarterback, then yeah, you might be scared. But like you said earlier, your strength of schedule, you should be set up to beat every team in the league. So I don't think teams really look and are like shaking in their boots too much.
That's a good point that if you have a young quarterback and your first 3 or 4 games are against elite defenses, that might be a rough go. There's also competing thoughts on this for me because my first answer would just be no, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter the order. We'll find out. Not if we're trying to do it right now, but where it could matter is let's say you start the season as the Vikings and you have to play Philadelphia, the Lions, and then Washington right off the bat. Because although, hey, we said that last year and they went 5-0 to start the season. So again, it all goes out the window when they start to play the games. But because we thought San Francisco was going to be way better than they were, we thought the Texans were going to be way better than they were. And then when they actually played the games, they weren't. But let's just suppose we'll go down this road anyway. If you get to 0-3 in the NFL, your chances of making the playoffs are basically nothing. I mean, even 0-2 is tough. They call it 0 tombstone because of how few teams make the playoffs after 0-2. So if the very beginning of your schedule is extremely hard, I think that can put you in a hole that then makes everything else harder. And later in the season, you start to feel like every single game is a playoff game. There's also those runs of road games. I mean, if you have 3 road games in a row, which was it last year or 2 years ago, the Vikings had 3 road games in a row, and you just go, why did that happen? The Vikings might have to go to Ireland if they have to go to Ireland. And then there was a Ben Lieber tweet that kind of looked like maybe they might also play somewhere else in London or something. Which if I don't know how to interpret the tweet, but the point is, if you're going over there, then you're having to come back. Then it's hard on you, that road schedule. But I do think it matters less than it ever did. Like they have such nice flights these days, and road stadiums are not as intimidating as they used to be. It probably, at the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter. You got to play everybody on your schedule. But I do think when a team feels like they're buried and they're trying to dig themselves out of a hole, that everything becomes harder after that.
Yeah, I'll revise my initial statement. I think regardless of your quarterback, that early part of your schedule probably matters a lot because confidence is huge for NFL teams. If you start out 2-0, 3-0, you're like, okay, this might be the year. We're feeling good. We're looking good. And that can lead to more wins. But like you said, you're looking at 0-2 and 0-3. You're like, what did we spend the whole offseason prepping for? Like
Right.
you're questioning yourself, and you might not be in the right mindset that you got to be for the rest of the season. So I feel like those first 4 or 5 games probably matter. But after that, it kind of just is what it is.
Very good. Well, intern Clay, great job. We started off the show with you tonight so you can get back to your studies. You got finals and final papers and all sorts of stuff, and you're in Eastern time, so it's already late enough. But I appreciate all the homework that you did gathering all these rankings, and we'll have to see what we can come with for you on Thursday. So thank you for your time, sir, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And it looks like the Knicks have made things interesting in this game, so you have to catch the end of that as well.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Come on.
Football.
Okay, my gosh. What have I done here? All right. Thank you, Clay. Football. I mean, how long we been interning here? You know, you try to teach him. You try to teach him. Intern Clay doing a great job digging up the homework today of rankings. I was hoping he would come up with like top 3 alternative mascots or something. But that will be saved for later in the summer, I'm sure. So I'm here. What do you got? What do you guys want to talk about? Throw your questions in the chat and we'll have a conversation for a while. Intern Clay's mom, very proud. She knew that he needed to say football before he left. We're working on it. Still young. But what do you guys got? What do you guys got for questions, comments? What do you want to talk about? Blade Runner says Jalen Naylor has a chance to shine if and when Jordan Addison is suspended, could earn or lose millions. Yeah, that's a good point. And even though the Vikings drafted Ty Felton, I still think that Jalen Naylor is going to have a good season for them. And Son of Beavers follows up with, do I think that he gets traded during the preseason? No. I don't think so at all. I think that they are looking at Jalen Naylor as still wide receiver 3, still a downfield option for them, and the fill-in player for Jordan Addison. Or, I mean, somebody could always get hurt. That does happen as well, as like Addison got hurt early in the season and Jalen Naylor played pretty well in a couple of games replacing Jordan Addison. So if he has to do it again, then he's already been in that role before. And then Ty Felton moves up, or Rondale Moore, or whoever, Lucky Jackson, Thayer Thomas, whoever it is, everybody has to slide up the depth chart for a couple of games. And historically, it's been 3 games has been the suspensions for DUI. If Jordan Addison gets the traditional 3-game suspension, I mean, that's a significant chunk there for Jalen Naylor to play that wide receiver 2 role. And the fact that he's got experience playing multiple positions in the offense, I would guess that they are not only not going to trade him, but are going to even put more pressure on him throughout the offseason to learn those positions and be ready, because we still don't know what's going to happen there. And this thing is being dragged out quite a bit. But if it does come back that he ends up with whatever charge coming through, these are legal terms, right? I don't know the legal terms. Guilty. I mean, whatever it is, that he'll probably get suspended for multiple games. So, and look, I think that Jalen Naylor and Ty Felton are 2 different guys where you can offer something different with each one of them on the field. So you wouldn't want to take Jalen Naylor off the roster and then not have that extra clear out guy and just have Felton being the underneath type of wide receiver, that yards after catch guy. I expect him to be a big part of the offense. Do I think they sign anybody from rookie minicamp tryouts? Well, that depends on them. I don't know. Every year there's been a guy or 2 that they'll sign and we're like, oh, okay. And the guy will end up at camp. And sometimes that guy turns out to be like Adam Thielen or something, or Chad Beebe. And usually they don't. So I don't know. I mean, the rookie minicamp this year, the reason it will be kind of interesting is that there's such a small draft class. Normally, what we're looking at a rookie minicamp is just all the draft picks. But this year, there will be opportunities for somebody to stand out. It's not a very intense thing to watch from a reporter perspective. They're not killing each other, they're not hitting each other, but there might be one of those players that you go, wait a minute, that guy's kind of catching everything out there, and then they end up bringing him in. Sometimes even in rookie minicamp, I remember like Ty Conklin making an impression. I kind of want to see Max Brosmer if he's there and see what he looks like under these circumstances because I didn't think that the Gophers had a particularly great offensive setup, and Max Brosmer put up pretty good numbers with that. Doesn't mean I think he's ever going to compete for a starting job, but could he get like that QB4 position where he's fighting for a practice squad spot? I think that kind of has to start in the rookie minicamp. So, but if we're short on questions this evening because it is a little bit of the slower time, then I could probably call it a wrap and watch the rest of this Knicks and Celtics game. So, who do I think signs first, Cam Akers or Dalton Reisner? Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Reisner should have a job. When you look around the NFL, I get why teams don't want a guy who doesn't run block effectively because a lot of your passing game is built off the run. Everyone is talking about how important the run game is these days. I am a little dubious on it being wildly different than it was in the past. Quarterback runs are changing the game and changing the numbers a little bit, but as far as just handing off to running backs, okay, Saquon Barkley was legendary this year. So was Derrick Henry. The rest of the league was the same as it ever was. But pass protection, it's getting harder to find guys who can pass pro by at the guard spot. That's why we're talking about drafting Donovan Jackson makes more sense than it ever had. So, I mean, I don't know why Dalton Reisner doesn't get any attention from the league or better contracts. I also think maybe too that in the past he's overvalued himself a little bit going into free agency. I remember last year him saying that he didn't have a lot of opportunities other than the Vikings. And you go, well, maybe it's not a bad idea to grab him again if he wants a job, if nobody wants him. I mean, he stepped in both years and done pretty well. I thought last year that Ed Ingram was struggling so much that Dalton Reisner saved the day coming in and playing a solid right guard. Can you imagine what would have happened to Ed Ingram in the game against Tennessee, where they were playing against Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, and they were just sending everybody at Sam Darnold? So, I mean, I don't know. I don't really understand it. Cam Akers, I get a little bit more. I mean, he was good for them last year, but you're still talking about the serious injury risk of 2 repaired Achilles. And is he as explosive as he used to be? But, you know, we might see him. He might come back. He was a really good teammate and a grinder. I do wonder about, because I made, and this will probably be a podcast for later in the week, but I made a list of all the different potential surprises for the 53-man roster. I made my first 53-man roster projection, and I'll go through that definitely later in the week. That's probably Thursday's podcast. So we'll do that. But you know, the projection for the roster, and I also looked at like what could be surprises or things that we're looking for in the spring. Does another running back show up, or are they going to roll with Ty Chandler as RB3? We are in a world where now you guys and me, we look at every roster move and decision under a microscope and go, okay, but you know, both of these running backs have had some injuries at times. So, you know, are you going to roll out Ty Chandler as RB3 again? Or does this guy, Trey Stewart from Jacksonville State, have a chance? They're bringing him in. I don't know. Like it was supposed to be such a deep running back draft that there would be undrafted guys who were talented. So maybe, or maybe we do see Cam Akers back in week 3 or something. I don't know. I just wouldn't be surprised. And either one of those guys are fine to bring back to the Vikings if they want to. One more from Son of a Beavers. During preseason, what position can you see them trading a late day 3 pick for? Tight end 3 or safety? Yeah, safety is another position. Well, I was thinking running back actually as I'm reading that just now, because if Ty Chandler has the same camp that he had last year, he's going to get cut. Last year, I think they came out of camp and went, okay, that is not what we were looking for this year for him picking up the offense and all that. And then last year proved that they couldn't really trust him. That's why I've been thinking, like, is there somebody else that's on the way at the running back position, or are they going to try this one more time? But if they do and they don't like what they see, then they could trade the late day 3 or just the pick swap, a 7th for a 6th or something. Tight end 3, I like the competition that they got. The guy from Georgia, Gavin Bartholomew, who I was actually just before this talking with his high school coach for an article I'm doing about him, hoping to connect with him at rookie minicamp and get that out there. But I think they're okay with tight end 3. I know you guys love tight end 3. It's really funny how your roster, think about this. The roster is so deep that I've gotten probably just as many tight end 3 questions as anything else on the entire roster because you're like, okay, well, that's filled and that's filled. Where's the question mark? Tight end 3. But that's what they drafted Gavin Bartholomew to be. That will be a competition, though. There will be multiple guys, I'm sure. But you could be right. They could, I don't think trade for one, but maybe you're talking about pick one up, a veteran who gets released because he loses a competition. Could be. Panucci says, does Addison get traded with the looming suspension and the Vikings adding more receivers? I don't think there's any chance that Jordan Addison gets traded by this team unless there's another problem. We always have to hedge because we said last year, well, he better have learned his lesson, and then he didn't. And so he better have learned his lesson this time around. But Jordan Addison is not a player you trade. A first round draft pick who can get you in the ballpark of 1,000 yards, 70 catches, one of the best deep ball trackers in the league, great route runner. If he was wide receiver 1 last year, he's probably got 100 catches. But, Justin Jefferson, of course, takes up a good percentage of that, but he's open all the time. He's just not a guy that you want to let go out of your building. Anything you trade him for is not going to be worth it. In the best case scenario for Jordan Addison, he plays so well and keeps his nose clean over the next 2 years to the point where they're signing him to an extension to where it looks like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. That is the best possible scenario for the Vikings with Jordan Addison. The reason that I love the idea of drafting receivers is because they're so hard to replace. Now, if Ty Felton is phenomenal, well, then maybe you feel like you can let Addison go and not have to spend $30 million on him. But aside from that, just would not be a guy that I'm trying to get rid of because, okay, you get a draft pick or something. Great. You're looking for what? Having to draft another wide receiver because you hope he becomes as good as Jordan Addison. I get it with the off-field stuff. And I remember saying last year after the arrest or citation that if they decided that was enough for them and they moved him, I'd be like, okay, because there's no one as important as Justin Jefferson. But since then, there have been no issues. If that continues to be the case, well, I would prefer that they just have a player who makes your quarterback better. Blade Runner says, how much faith do you have in the run defense with the teams on the schedule this season? Yeah, I looked at this the other day that they're facing like the top 3 in the league or something like that in the run. I don't think the run defense is going to be anywhere near as effective as last year, but I also think that the pressure on the quarterback from rushing 4 and their coverage can be better than it was last year. It was certainly good, but if you look at the second half of that season, they were much closer to an average team when it came to coverage, and they were really good with a couple of players at creating pressure, but not enough. It really depends on Jonathan Allen and whether he goes back to being the guy that he was a couple years ago. One thing that I really don't know was what Jonathan Allen was told to do. So was he told to just rush upfield every time, or was he told that he needed to stop the run and then just was being beaten because he's getting older? Because once upon a time, Jonathan Allen is a really good run defending defensive tackle. Sometimes those PFF numbers can be shaped by the context and just what you're told to do by your coaching staff. If your coaching staff says stop the run on the way to the quarterback, well, you're going to miss tackles and you're not going to be a good run defender. But if there's an emphasis on stuffing gaps and holding blockers in place and making tackles, well, then you might get better numbers than that. Overall, quarterbacks running is going to be a problem because it's always a problem. those teams, you're not going to stop Lamar Jackson. You're not going to stop Jalen Hurts. What you're hoping for, though, is that they do lean on the run more than the pass. And if the running goes up because you have running quarterbacks, maybe the pass success goes down a little bit against the Vikings defense. But I mean, I think they'll be fine. Harrison Phillips is still a good run defender. We'll see about a Levi Drake Rodriguez, a Jalen Redmond, who was good against the run, Taki Taimani. But the guys that are running down the opposing runners are really good. Blake Cashman, Ivan Pace Jr., Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus. Like these guys who are making those tackles are good. And they usually don't put anybody out there who at cornerback can't tackle, which is really vital in the NFL today. I think it's underrated that corners, can't tackle. Tony says Donovan Jackson's going to be a beast. Got to eat your vegetables every once in a while. I don't disagree with that. I mean, this fan base, you're never going to have to fight too hard to convince that drafting a guard is a good idea. I don't even know if drafting a guard should be viewed these days as eating the vegetables. I know it's not as exciting as maybe some other positions, I guess, but the increase in difficulty, the degree of difficulty for corners for guards has never been higher. It's never been higher. And this shows up in the numbers, how difficult it is to play guard these days, which also means we're going to need some patience probably with Donovan Jackson at times. But to have somebody who is athletic enough to play tackle for an Ohio State at the highest level under the brightest lights moving into guard is really telling. And I think that being anything short of a freakish athlete is just not going to get it done anymore at guard, or at least having, Tyler Booker will probably be okay with his size, but usually to match up with the defensive tackles and the blitzes, the intelligence, the athleticism that's required, it's a valuable position now. I think it's moved up into, if we're going to say defensive tackle is premium, then guard has to, those are the guys who are trying to stop them. Then guard has to get its due as well. Son of Beavers wouldn't mind Jonathan Bullard coming back. Thing is, there's a lot of competition there. There's just a lot of competition in the room for defensive tackle. I was in my 53 projection. I was trying to get everybody on the team and I couldn't. Levi Drake Rodriguez, Jalen Redmond, Taki Taimani, and then Ty Ingram Dawkins is also now part of that room. That's a lot of guys that are competing. Bullard, they could bring back if they had an injury or something. I think he did a good job for them, but I also think they want more than zero as far as the ability to get after the quarterback. Because if you put a guy in there on first down as a run stuffer, but then they drop back to throw, you've just got nothing. I mean, he can move bodies, but you've got nothing for him getting upfield. Skywalking McCarthy, happy May the 4th be with you yesterday, I guess. Saw that everywhere. Where did that come from? Says, looking forward to the tight end 3 battle. Who do you think wins it? I think it's Urasek. Oh, it could be. I think Evan Bartholomew is going to win it probably, because what you're often looking for is somebody who is reflective of your starter to be able to slide into that position. And Bartholomew is kind of a TJ Hawkinson type. He's not the biggest. He's not like the biggest bruiser, but he is a route runner and he's a pass catcher. But it could be the undrafted free agent. I mean, there's not that big of a difference between 6th round and UDFA. Son of Beavers, all the deep roster questions today. How many open roster spots are there? There's not that many. There's really not that many. I mean, this is not going to be a year where we're talking about a ton of competitions. I mean, Skywalking McCarthy talking about tight end 3. I get ready to hear a lot about the tight end 3 battle, I guess, because no, I understand. I understand where May the 4th be with you. May the 4th be with you. I understand that. I know that. But when did they start saying that? Did that start in the 70s and I just didn't notice? Or was that recent? Is it like an internet thing? I had never heard it until recently. And I certainly had not seen everybody dressing up. People were dressing up as Star Wars characters to go in public and go to church and everything like that. Like, I don't know. I just saw it everywhere yesterday. I knew what it meant. I got the pun. I just didn't know when it became a phenomenon. But anyway, the 53-man roster, there's not a lot of these competitions. There's a little bit of a depth battle at defensive tackle. There's a little bit of tight end. At the back end of the wide receiver group, Rondale Moore, and then everybody behind Rondale Moore that's chasing him if he has a chance to make the team. I think a lot of us have already put him on the team, but we shouldn't really do that because we don't know what he's going to come back from the injury. And we've seen this player before in like Tajay Sharp or Kendall Wright, Michael Floyd. It doesn't always work out just because the guy was somewhere else first. There's a bunch of guys that are going to be trying to chase him down. It was created by Disney to sell merch. Oh, okay. I respect it. We need to come up with something like that for Purple Insider, I guess, because it worked, whatever they did. Mama says, how much do you think KOC enjoys throwing to Jefferson in camp? Oh, I mean, he has a great time. He's a kid in a candy store out there. That is one thing about Kevin O'Connell that I think rubs off on everybody, which is just his joy for football, his enthusiasm. I mean, he getting out there and he doesn't throw the nicest passes I've ever seen, but getting out there, being on the field, throwing to the receivers, you know that he loves it. They sense that he loves it. They know how much he loves the game and how much he cares about it. And that enthusiasm just matters a lot, I think, to the players. And it helps create this work environment that everybody wants to be a part of. But it's not the nicest throws, I will say. Not that I could throw it better. Blade Runner, it was your birthday yesterday. Oh, no. So you're the May the 4th be with you. May the 4th on your birthday be with you. That's rough. If KOC were to start a game this year, could we win a game? Absolutely not. No. You would lose 50-0 if Kevin O'Connell started the game for you. he couldn't start a game when he was 20. Much less when he is now 38 or 39. No, he would be horrible. He wouldn't have a chance. It's a tough game out there. It is a very tough game in the NFL. He would not have remotely any possible opportunity to win a football game. Remember when the wide receiver started for Denver? That's probably what it would look like. I think that he would know so much about the offense that he could complete swing passes, maybe. But I don't think they would even be accurate. Maybe screens, but he's not great at dialing up screens. So then I don't even know if he could do that. I think he could get a couple of screens. He could probably take the snap and get the ball out of his hands fast enough to just get it to a running back who would then be destroyed. It's a hard league, and he would have to train like an NFL quarterback to take any hit. That's one thing that we don't, or that we take it for granted, I think, is how insanely painful it must be to get hit by Jonathan Allen or Javon Hargrave. And that's something that the quarterbacks prepare themselves year round to do. So if they just threw Kevin O'Connell into a game, it would be very ugly. But that's a funny question. I wonder what his answer to that is if he had to get. I think it would be the same as mine. They would just not score any points. That's why you draft one kid that's 22, 10th overall, so he can do it. So the biggest roster battles: tight end 3, DT 4, cornerback 3. Cornerback 3, is that even? Because it looks like it's going to be Rodgers, Byron Murphy, and Mekhi Blackman. And then it's really cornerback 4. Is it McGlothern? Is it Jeff Okuda? Or does somebody else? Ambry Thomas? Like, does somebody else? That's a real person. If there's another guy that kind of emerges, somebody else could take that cornerback 4 spot. The safety 3 is, yeah, well, okay. So safety, I was thinking about that. Like, is Jay Ward in the competition? They have not talked about Jay Ward as if he's in the competition. They have talked about Theo Jackson. Can we get a punter battle? I hope so. For God's sake, we have been told year after year there will be a punter battle, and there really isn't one. I mean, we've been lied to, hoodwinked. Somebody needs to do a behind the scenes Seth Wickersham 10,000 word article about where these punting competitions have gone. So Oscar Chapman, I wish the best to you, but they just, they keep running back the same guy over and over again. So, but yeah, I mean, the safety position seems like it belongs to Theo Jackson, but it's a long spring and summer. Jay Ward could make a name for himself. We've seen that happen before. Maybe, but it really seems like they're locked in on Theo Jackson. Uh, Skywalking McCarthy's favorite pick was Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, Shamar Stewart profile without the risk. Yeah, I mean, guys like that historically don't work out. Historically. And that goes for Shamar Stewart too. But when you're taking one in the fifth, we used to make fun of the Vikings for doing it because it was so predictable. Every year, it's some guy who's tall and has a good relative athletic score and lanky, and he didn't sack anybody. And we go, okay, we know what you guys are doing. You're looking for the next Daniil Hunter. But there are a little bit of circumstances that go around Ingram Dawkins that makes him more interesting to me than those guys, which is number one, he was at Georgia and decided to stay there and wait his turn to get in the game. That's something we don't see very much in college football anymore. If you're not playing at Georgia, you're just going to transfer to Chattanooga or something to make sure you play, and then you'll get your sacks there. He waited his turn. And also, the reason they drafted him, and we got this impression from his first press conference, is seems like a guy with the right attitude. And that attitude is to develop, that he knows he's not taking Andrew Van Ginkel's job or, any of the other defensive tackles jobs. He knows he's going to come into the room and be a development player. And somebody on draft night compared him to or Jihad Ward. I like that comparison a lot. Somebody who is a tweener, which they also got with Tyler Batty, the undrafted free agent from BYU. They are good with tweeners, guys who weigh 270 pounds and are 6'3" or 6'4". That's not really a defensive tackle. It's not really an outside linebacker or a defensive end. So, those guys can find a role like Jihad Ward did last year for the Vikings. And, in the past, it's been a more rigid type of system with Mike Zimmer, where if you didn't really fit the profile of one of those defensive line positions, then you weren't going to make it so much. But now with Brian Flores, he can say, what is the one thing he's good at? Where does he fit in? And what he found from Ward last year was he rushes up the middle well. And so he put him in position to do that all the time. That might be the case for Ingram Dawkins. We'll see. I think he's a guy that should make the team. But if he does make the team, then who goes out? Is it Tyamani, who made the team last year but then got hurt? I don't know. Is Bo Richter edge 4? Yeah, how about that position, by the way? How about that position? Right now, the Vikings have nobody competing at outside linebacker outside of the guys we already know. So it's Van Ginkel, Grenard, Turner, but then Bo Richter and Gabe Murphy. And outside of that, they brought in one guy from Georgia who had some sacks last year, Chambliss, undrafted free agent. Aside from that, like they don't have dudes at that position. It's really some 3-4 defensive end types, a lot of defensive tackles, but they don't have a lot of depth there, which I think shows belief. Bo Richter is one of those guys to watch this year in training camp. I think he's going to take a step forward. He was a player for them last year and then did great on special teams, which I value. I think if you can do well on special teams, then at least we know you can be on an NFL field making plays, gives you a chance. And Gabe Murphy too. He had a good training camp before he got hurt. So they like those guys, but that might be one position where they could add somebody. That was a question earlier. Like, where could they add? Maybe if there's one guy who gets banged up, you have to go out and look for somebody else to help there. So did NIL ruin the Gophers' chances of ever being good? They were pretty good last year, weren't they? I don't think that it did. I don't think that maybe at basketball it did, but I don't think that it did for football. They were still able to go out and use it to keep some players and to get Max Brosmer as a quarterback. I think they'll be okay in that world. They're never going to use it to turn around and be ridiculously great, but I think that they can compete in that world. Let's see. Joel says you could pick one offensive player, one defensive player from the past that isn't more than likely won't be a Hall of Famer to put on the roster. Okay, so somebody who won't be in the Hall of Fame. I assume you just mean Vikings. Somebody who won't be on the Hall of Fame that I would want to put on this roster. Yes, basketball, they're in trouble with the NILs. Yep. That didn't work out too good for them. So I could take anybody from the roster, from any roster from the Vikings in the past who is not in the Hall of Fame, and I could put them on this team right now. I would probably go with, let me see. Who is how about this? Antoine Winfield would be the guy. I would put Antoine Winfield on defense for sure. And if PFF had been around long enough, he might have been a Hall of Famer because the PFF numbers really tell a story with Antoine Winfield. But also, Pat Williams is a pretty good answer to that, or Henry Thomas. How about somebody who's a little more beefy than what they have now? Um, Even recently, how about Xavier Rhodes? I might go with Xavier Rhodes just because they don't have that corner who locks people down. But I like Winfield as kind of a first answer. And Panucci's answer is exactly who I was going to go with. Technically, Adrian Peterson's not a Hall of Famer yet, but I know that's not of the way you're presenting the question. Like he will be, but Adrian Peterson 2012 would be an answer here. But this would be the answer for me. Probably Percy Harvin would be the guy that you would put on the offensive side. And if I can have him returning kicks as well, that's a good one. But, Anthony Carter would be another one just for a wide receiver. Robert Smith. How about Robert Smith? As good as I think that their running game is going to be, Robert Smith is probably a great answer for that. Or Leroy Horde just for the vibes. You guys might end up loving Jordan Mason as much as Leroy Horde. Similar type of player. Just going to be, I think, a fan favorite because he's going to run over people. That's a fun question, but yeah, for me, it's Percy Harvin. Maybe there's like a Jeff Christie. Ryan Kelly's good though. Jeff Christie was pretty good. Matt Burke was pretty good. Like those guys, top notch centers. You might go with Cordero Patterson. Hey, the kick returns back. Cordero would have been really great with that. Obviously, Jerome Felton is the answer. Jim Kleinsaucer. How about a little meat? How about a little more meat on that offensive side? All right. Anyway, now we've reached the point where you guys are talking about if a hot dog is a sandwich. So that's probably the time to duck out. I also want to. Chad Greenway would be a good answer. I think they kind of have Chad Greenway in Blake Cashman, like that kind of player. Ivan Pace. I don't know if it takes. Like Greenway was a really good player, obviously, but I don't know if I'm trying to think of an Antoine Winfield kind of fills an area where they're not already really great. Everson Griffin would be another answer. Like, how about Everson Griffin on this team to go with the other pass rushers that they have, or Linval Joseph? Just in terms of guys I've covered. I mean, Linval Joseph would be a good answer too. Dalvin Cook in his prime is better than both of these running backs for sure. So, all right, I'm gonna watch the end of this Celtics Knicks game. But thanks for the chat, everybody. This is fun. It's gonna be chill around here, I think, and we're gonna get OTAs and we're gonna get mini camp and rookie mini camp, and I'll be reporting on all those things. But a lot of opportunities in the live shows to just talk football and have some fun. So I'm glad that you all joined for that. Sydney Rice, yeah, Sydney Rice 0809. Sydney Rice would be good for sure. But okay, well, great stuff, everybody. Oh yeah. Sharif Floyd before he got hurt. There's a lot of good answers in this team's recent history. But Percy Harvin still probably is the best because you can use him in the backfield. You can use him at the nickel. You can use him in the return game. He could do absolutely anything. So, all right. Thursday night, we'll be back going live unless there's some sort of news item that happens before that. And I don't know if reports of the Vikings playing in Ireland are quite enough for an emergency pod. We'll see. Maybe if it's a tight end signing, then it will be. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you all soon. Football.